What is up, Four-Eyed fans? I am your host, Jorge Edwards, and welcome to Behind the Frames. This is a really awesome week. We got a lot of cool content coming your way. But let me just quickly go around the horn and just say hi to everybody. Aaron, how you doing?
Beautiful night to say Fantasy Football Live's live.
Nate Markham, how are you doing?
Wonderful.
And Ken Sonnenberg?
I'm a little freaked out right now. I just learned that we're actually live instead of like live to tape or something like this. So this is a little freaked out for me for right now.
Yeah, no. So
I still have no idea what live to tape means.
Yeah, what is
that?
Yeah,
that's what, when you get older, you'd understand that. It's an old thing. I'll explain it to you later.
So before we go on the air, Ken's like, "So is this live?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's been live the past 4 weeks, the past month." So
thanks for tuning in.
Say hi to our mothers who are watching and our friends and our spouses. You know,
I am up with the technology.
Yes. So anyhow, we got some awesome news to talk about today. But before we do that, let's get into the big thing that we're promoting here at Fantasy and Frames, which is the Four-Eyed Championships. Hashtag I want in. I guess we should put the hashtag now. It's too late because we've officially filled all the spots for the Four-Eyed Championships in less than 2 weeks. Thank you, all the Four-Eyed fans. Thank you, all the analysts, for participating. Thank you, all the fans that are participating. You will be getting emails. So each one of us in these squares, we are your commissioners for each of the divisions, and you'll be getting those league invites to Sleeper, and you will interact with your commissioner as much as you want. They'll be around for you, and they're going to be the ones overseeing how things go on your way to winning a division championship as well as the overall championship in the Four-Eyed Championships. So we're really excited about that. But let's get to some relevant fantasy news. The only real fantasy relevant news that's come out this week, and that is Cam Newton to the New England Patriots. Rapid reaction, first thoughts, Nate Markham.
I don't trust the health. I worry, he said it was the foot injury and it wasn't the shoulder, but I don't believe it. He's had multiple issues with that shoulder, and shoulder from a recovery standpoint is very difficult. Non-weight bearing joints don't heal as quick. I worry about that. I do think that if he does play, it's a bump to James White personally. Okay. But I don't know anybody else.
All right, Aaron, rapid reaction.
Quarterback competition. Cam versus not Jared Stidham. Cam versus healthy Cam. That's the quarterback competition in New England. If Cam is healthy, Cam's the quarterback. Period. End of sentence. There's that is it. That is the only competition in New England for quarterback. It's Cam and his health.
Right. No, I saw this posting on Twitter where somebody mentioned that in all the seasons that Cam Newton has played a full 16, he hasn't ranked lower than the quarterback 5 in fantasy. So
I've got him here if you want him. All 8 seasons prior to last year. He only missed 5 games in the first 8 seasons of his career before last season. And in those 8 seasons, he finished 3rd, 4th, 3rd, 17th, 1st, 18th, 2nd, and 12th. I mean, the guy's been a fantasy stud when he's been on the field. So,
yeah, I gave Cam Newton the kiss of death last year. I was really high on Cam Newton, and then all of a sudden, and I drafted him in best ball and redraft leagues. And next thing you know, he goes and breaks his foot, and it's just all downhill from there. But no, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with this offense. Nate, I like your take as far as James White. We'll talk more about that when we cover the AFC East on Fourth and Frames, which is our fantasy football podcast here at fantasyandframes.com. And don't forget to go to fantasyandframes.com. Check out all of our articles, from talking about slot wide receiver matchups to IDP to our rapid triage series, looking at one burning question from every NFL team from a fantasy perspective, as well as our most recent series in talking about boring players, the unsung heroes in fantasy football from each division that could potentially help win you a fantasy football championship. And with that, let's get to today's topic. And this is a really novel way we're going to approach things. So we're going to do things a little bit differently, a little bit faster than we do normally in our article forms as well as in our podcasts. We're going to be talking not only about the value of players in the AFC East, but the value of them, where they're going in terms of draft position or average draft position. So using Fantasy Football Calculator as our source, We're doing a 12-team, common number of teams, half PPR format ADP, looking at the most recent week's ADP. And we're going to be looking at the AFC East players that are in the middle of the drafts. And this is a really beneficial lesson here to be learned here on Behind the Frames. In that, and Aaron, you can agree with this, or you would agree with this rather, that you can really help or hurt yourself in the middle of your fantasy draft. That's where you're building your championship roster. That's where the 4-eye titles are coming from. So with that, let's start looking at some of these players in the AFC East. I'll start from a quarterback's perspective as far as where they're going. Let's look at Cam Newton. Currently, which he's already being drafted, which is amazing considering the news came out 2 days ago. He's going in the middle of the 13th round. The only other quarterback that I'd be interested in the AFC East would be Josh Allen. He's going in the middle of the 7th. Now, my personal take on this is I can see Cam Newton, assuming that he's healthy, the closer we get into the draft season in August and during the month of August when training camp is supposed to start, I foresee Cam Newton kind of climbing up to where Josh Allen is because they're the same player when healthy. Mm-hmm. They're big quarterbacks who use their legs and have cannons for an arm that are slightly inaccurate, but they give you tremendous fantasy upside. That being said, let's think about this for a second. Let me pull up. So Josh Allen. Josh Allen is going around players like Damian Williams, Tyler Boyd, Kareem Hunt, Brandon Cooks, and even fellow quarterback Aaron Rodgers. Ken, I'm just going to put you on the spot right now. Do any of those names I just rattled off make you want to draft them over Josh Allen?
Josh Allen? Well, Aaron Rodgers is always... I mean, it's also where you are. I look at it also where you are, what your league is doing, how the draft is going. I kind of also want
right, to. I get the point, but let's assuming that you're drafting pretty balanced. You have good wide receivers, you got a good tight end, a good running back in your stable, and you're looking later in the draft to draft a quarterback. Based off of who I'm telling you, would you rather build depth with the players that I mentioned, or would you rather go for a quarterback at Josh Allen, where his current ADP is at?
I'd probably go with Josh Allen where his ADP is at, and I'd take Josh Allen over a Cam Newton. I understand what you guys were saying about Cam Newton, how good he's been. The difference between Josh Allen and Cam Newton, yes, they are the same player, but you got 9 years of getting beaten up by with Cam Newton versus only about 2 years for Josh Allen. So if I was taking my chances on one, I'll even go if I'm taking my choice of one of those two quarterbacks, Josh Allen or Cam Newton, I'd go Josh Allen because he also has better receivers too. I mean, John Brown and Stephon Diggs, I would take over Julian Edelman and N'Keal Harry.
Wow, that's a take that we may be getting to a little bit later. So just to clarify, you would take Josh Allen at that price?
Yeah, that price is about right.
All right. Nate, I'm just quickly putting you on the spot. Take him in 7th round or not?
I'd like to wait a little bit longer on some of the other guys later personally, but I mean, is he value it where he's going? Yeah, I think there's value in it, but it's not my specific style, if you're asking for me personally.
So the value is not worth it for him in terms of who's going around in the draft.
Correct.
Okay, and Aaron, I'm assuming you agree with that?
Yeah, I'm going to wait. I'm going to pass.
Okay. As far as other quarterbacks in the division, Sam Darnold, Ryan Fitzpatrick / Tua, they're not even listed in the ADP, which kind of tells you all you really need to know in terms of where you're drafting these quarterbacks based off of who's available and value and all that jazz. So with that, let's go into some running back talk. Nate, you're going to be the running back guy for this show.
Yeah.
Let's go through the ADP. Let's start with, you had mentioned earlier his name in Le'Veon Bell. He's going 3rd round at some point.
Yeah.
Who's he going around in terms of ADP?
Kenyon Drake is going right before him if we're talking about running backs. Chris Carson's about the same pick. Melvin Gordon. As far as other players, right around 27. you get into that glut of receivers, the Amari Coopers, the Adam Thielens, the Cooper Kupps, sprinkle in a couple tight ends. I am not big investing in Lev Bell at this point. I do think that there's rebound potential. I think he's kind of handcuffed by Adam Gase a little bit. But overall, if at that spot at the early third, I think there's way much better value of running backs later. And at that point, that's where I'm happy to take my wide receiver 2 at. Or even my tight end 1, actually. If Mark Andrews is right around there, I'm happy reaching on him personally over Lev.
Now, what about Mark Andrews?
Nate sounds more convincing with that new microphone than ever.
Yes.
Very much. Listen to me. Trust me.
He's got me wrapped around his finger, or he's got me wrapped around his finger.
Very smooth and melodic sounding, your voice.
That
there.
deep, trusting voice.
Yes.
Deep, exactly.
And my Scott Fishbowl Lego shirt.
Clearly. Scott Fishbowl, SBX.
I thought we
or did I get that wrong? SFBX, excuse me.
So
okay, let's keep going down the running back list.
The next group really, as far as ADP, there is actually before that's Devin Singletary. Singletary is one that I know is, man, it's broken down the middle. I think there's a lot of truthers out there and there's a lot of haters at the same time. The truthers look at some of his underlying numbers last year. He's number 5 in true yards per carry, breakaway runs. Excluded from that, he was still he was 8th overall in breakaway runs. So he had this huge outliers to have to take out, and he still was number 5 in true yards per carry. He had a juke rate of 3rd. I mean, you take away the fact that, yes, Zach Moss is there, and yes, Josh Allen's going to take the goal line carries. 2 touchdowns with that many potential opportunities when you're investing. I say he's value where he's going. I know that's going to be, nope, you're stupid, you're wrong. Even with this melodic, sweet sound of my voice. I am a Devin Singletary fan, and I will say that given where he's going right now, which is around 32.6, the 18th running back off the board, I'm a buyer.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I see James Conner. I'm not sold on James Conner.
No.
You have the wide receivers right there. And the way, we're looking at this ADP, shocker, running back is like one of the most prevalent positions that's being picked over in most drafts. And so you have to get your running back at some point. And based off of the running backs that are available after Singletary, which for the most part is James Conner, I think I'm with you. I would take Singletary over Conner at that ADP.
Right.
Aaron, rapid reaction?
Wow. I mean, I'm kind of surprised that you guys are in on Singletary when he's not the guy that's going to score the touchdowns around the goal line. We just talked about Josh Allen, and, I know we passed on Josh Allen, but we're not passing on Josh Allen because he's not the goal line back. He is the goal line back in Buffalo. That's who Josh Allen is. So with a guy who's going to vulture my questionably late wait on zero running back RB1 in Devin Singletary, no thank you. I want a guy who's going to score touchdowns. I need him to score touchdowns if I'm waiting this long to select a running back.
Yep. So a lot of people have used that argument as far as Josh Allen vulturing goal line touches. But remember, there was a period in time in Carolina talking about Cam Newton, doing the same thing, but Jonathan Stewart was still a viable flex option. That being said, Jonathan Stewart wasn't going in the 3rd round, so I guess I can understand that perspective as well. Ken, your thoughts on?
Go ahead, Ken. Back
Devin Singletary to me is an ass. He's got a
Devin Singletary
like an like
meh. Okay.
Or let me do what the kids say, meh.
I don't think
I like the first one, drawing the ratings. Yeah.
Okay. I'm up with what the kids are saying now.
When Ken says kids, he means the little rascals,
right?
Or the bad news bears, maybe.
I'm more the bad news bears. I'm not that old. Little rascals. Come on.
Right.
Jeez.
And Todd says about James Conner, I 100% agree. If he could play full 16 games, he would.
Yes.
He would be my RB1 all day. I'm totally fine with that if he could play. But that's not gonna. I personally can't guarantee it. Not clairvoyant, but that's been the issue, obviously. So Go ahead.
Also, one quick thing. Also with Singletary, like I said, he's a type player, and I don't know what Zach Moss is going to do and how they're going to work him possibly into the running game. I know he's a rookie and he's just coming out, but between that Singletary and whatever Josh Allen's going to get.
Yeah. Singletary will get worked into the receiving game a little bit more. I mean, if he had 4 touchdowns last year and in legitimately, we'll say 12 games, but it was more like 8, extrapolate that over 16. And if you give me 1,500 all-purpose yards and 8 touchdowns, that's worthy of a late round RB1. That's a lot of ifs though. When I put 4 or 5 ifs into a sentence, probably that should give you room for pause. But I gotta take a stand.
I take more of a shot. Le'Veon Bell is being drafted around the same area as Singletary, so I'd be more willing to take a shot with him with his history and the Jets' complete lack of really anything else. So Bell's output is going to be dependent on how smart or idiotic his coach is.
Mm-hmm.
So
that is definitely up for debate, given the usage of Bell last season. All right, let's keep going down the running back list, Nate.
Gotcha. Earlier, I mentioned the Sony Michel, James White discussion and the involvement of Cam into that offense and what that's going to do. Right now, where they're going is around 84 and 89th overall. They're separated pretty much only by about three running backs. In that same group, what you have is a couple of the flyer wide receivers, the injury risks, the Brandon Cooks, the Will Fullers, the Julian Edelman, same team. Another couple number 3s in Christian Kirk and some of the tight ends. I probably, if I'm going to take in a half-point PPR, I'm okay reaching on James White. I don't know if that's a reach, honestly. It's just taking a person at that point. There's not a lot you're giving up. You're just taking either depth at running back or depth at wide receiver. The question then is game script. If the New England Patriots defense is actually as good as they were last year, I think that probably puts Sony Michel on the field a little bit more than James White, but I don't think that they're going to be as good as they were last year. Personally, I think they lost some pieces, and I think they're going to play a catch up in a few games, and I think that puts James White on the field a little bit more. Thoughts, opinions?
No, that makes a lot of sense. And of course, we're talking, it's all, when we're talking about players and where they should go and whether or not you should draft them, it's all format dependent of your league, right? Mm-hmm. So we here at Fantasy and Frames, we talk, when we talk about scoring formats, we talk about half PPR. Obviously PPR, regular PPR formats, James White is a player who gets a bump there. But, non-PPR, Sony Michel.
Well, like Todd said, that the injury was just released, that information about 2-3 weeks ago. It does put his beginning of the season at risk. I think it makes Damian Harris a little bit of that super late grab people have been talking about. I personally, I don't think anybody really likes the New England Patriot backfield. I mean, when's the last time you've really wanted to invest in one of them guys? It's Bill Belichick all just playing with our emotions.
I don't know. I kind of like the idea of James White though. Look, I'm not saying he's Christian McCaffrey, and I forget who I saw on Twitter that was talking about usage of James White and the uptick that you'll see with Cam Newton on the field with James White. Cam Newton's not Tom Brady. Cam Newton's not going to, even before Christian McCaffrey came to Carolina, Cam Newton wasn't a check down quarterback. He was kind of forced into that because of the addition of McCaffrey. They have some weapons. They still have Julian Edelman, who we'll get to later. They have good receiving options. Well, I shouldn't say they have good receiving options. They have receiving options down the field. Whether or not they'll take them or not, we'll get to later. But, if there is a slight uptick, man, I'm with you. I was going to try to make an argument for getting James White, but it's hard, man.
Back out.
Belichick, is going to – yeah, I'm with you.
Save 20 picks later and draft this guy, Jordan Howard. He's the last clear RB1 in that area, in my opinion. I'm not worried about Matt
Breida enters the chat.
I know, Matt Breida. I get it. But Jordan Howard's tried and true. You have this kind of, I don't want to call it a new system, but it's a new system. It's new players. They like the what I think is consistency, even though it's decreasing each year. He went from 1,300 yards in 16 to 1,122 and 17 to under 1,000, and then last year 500 and really 119 touches. But he's proven that he can score. You mentioned you like guys that are going to score touchdowns. I mean, he's done that at a pretty consistent rate everywhere he's been. And at this point, what else are you going to go with? Do you really want – I mean, actually, I will say there's one person right around him that I really do like, and that's Marvin Jones. I actually would have a difficult time taking him over Marvin Jones. But again, we're not talking about roster construction, but that's where I kind of would look at that too. I want that depth of Jordan Howard just to – I don't know, take the load off of if it's Tua later on or if it's Fitz. We don't know yet, but
harder to find running backs down there in the draft too, right, Nate?
Absolutely.
So easier to find a replacement for Marvin Jones than it is to find a number one back.
Exactly.
Somebody like Keyshawn Vaughn, rookie in Tampa Bay, would you rather have him over Jordan Howard?
No.
Yeah. Now, the reception upside for Breda, that doesn't scare you off a little bit in half PPR leagues?
That doesn't concern me. Dave, Matt Breida's 5.1 yards per carry doesn't bother me, because if someone's going to say 5.1 yards per carry and beyond Breida's side, but Devin Singletary averages 5 yards per carry and they're off him, which side are we on? It's a gut feeling that that's who you want at that point. I'm not calling you out, Dave. I love you.
David Fantasy Go is following us on Twitter right now. Thank you very much. Okay, well, I think that wraps up running back talk, I think, for the AFC. So let's get into some wide receiver talk. Aaron, I know you're amped up, you're ready to go. Got a lot of wide receivers to talk about. So who are we starting off with right now? And we're looking at their ADP and who's going around them.
Well, let's go with the first mid-round AFC East wide receiver going off the board after round 4. That's Stephon Diggs. His ADP is 4.6, somewhere around there. This is like the sweet spot for people who think that there's a ton of wide receivers in this draft. T.Y. Hilton, A.J. Brown, DJ Moore, Cortland Sutton, Keenan Allen, DK Metcalf, Stephon Diggs, all in the 4th round ADP right now. Wow, right? So how do you make a case for Stephon Diggs? Well, first you got to make a case against him, because that's how you do this kind of work, right? You got to find the reasons why you wouldn't before you can find the reasons why you would. And I tried to find good reasons not to take Diggs, and here's what I came up with. The Bills' offense, not a passing offense. Josh Allen, not an accurate quarterback. Bills were 23rd in points scored last year, 24th overall in yards, 29th overall in total completions. That is not a good offense to grab your number one wide receiver for, okay? Why do you now take Stephon Diggs? Because last year he played in Minnesota, who was 23rd in yards and 24th in completions. And despite being in that offense, that is a run-heavy offense, he still had 94 targets, over 1,100 receiving yards, and finished as wide receiver 18. He is the man in Buffalo, make no mistake about it. This is his time to absolutely burst onto the scene, dominate the offense, command the ball. I did a whole article on this. You can find it over at Fantasy and Frames about Stephon Diggs versus John Brown. John Brown is a deep threat and a deep threat only. Stephon Diggs can run all the routes. He has all the talent. Diggs is my guy. I know there's a lot of good wide receivers here in the 4th round, and it probably makes more sense to wait until round 5 and see which one of those guys gets passed on in round 4 if we're talking about draft strategy here, because one of these guys that I mentioned is going to make it to your 5th round. So if you're early in the 5th round, you can wait, get some running back depth, grab your top end tight end or whatever. So that's how I feel about Diggs. When we keep going down the draft board, the next AFC East wide receiver is Devontae Parker, 7th round ADP, about the beginning of the 7th round, 703. In that range of the draft, we're talking about Hollywood Brown, Tyler Boyd, Brandon Cooks, Will Fuller. Of course, Jeremy just had a great article. You can go check out his article about boring players on fantasyandframes.com. Great article. Jeremy's a up-and-coming awesome writer, so make sure you give him a follow on Twitter. At the J Knobs, right?
Yep.
Did I get that right? Yeah, you nailed
You got
that.
it right.
Yeah.
So he wrote about Brandon Cooks, and I kind of agreed with him that the Brandon Cooks bounce back is here, but we're talking about Devontae Parker. So why not Devontae Parker? Here are his career end of season wide receiver rankings. Ready? 67, 51, 57, 107, and then 6. I mean, one of these things is not like the other, Ken. I know you watch Sesame Street. One of these things is not like the other.
Every day.
Man.
But why should you take Devontae Parker? Okay.
All right.
So he was actually super consistent down the stretch of 2019. He actually won people leagues, right? Minus his bust in the Jet game. I think he was 2 for 2 catches for 24 yards or something. But 6 of the last 8 weeks, he had 10 or more targets. He had 128 total targets on the year. That's awesome. That is like top-notch wide receiver 1 territory there. When Ryan Fitzpatrick, who I think is going to be the Dolphins starter, I think Tua's got like at least a half a red shirt in him. Fitz took over in week 5. Instantly in week 6, boom, 10-plus targets for Devontae Parker. Okay, that's when he turned around. And this guy, he seems like he's been in the league and he's been a bust for a really, really long time. He came in young. He's only 27 years old. I know that surprised me today. He's only 27. Chris Godwin's 24. So they're a lot closer in age than we think. And Godwin busted out last season, and so did Parker. So I don't think that we have to hate truly on Devontae Parker. And when I look at the players who are going around him, at least the wide receivers, I'm willing to take that chance from that group of Boyd, Brown, Cooks, and Fuller on Parker than I am on those other guys. Anybody else?
I agree with you. I like Devontae Parker this year. I've never thought I'd say that, but I mean, the target share has to go to somebody. And if he's anticipated about 20 to 24% of the targets, that's 125 targets potentially. In the 7th round, you give me 125 targets, I'm all in.
We had our AFC East preview podcast on 4th and Frames with David from Fantasy Go, who's joining us right now on Periscope. And we talked about, potential hiccups in the road for Devontae Parker, and one being potentially Preston Williams. Everybody's, Preston Williams. Preston Williams hasn't done anything to warrant concern for taking away volume from Devontae Parker. You look at game script that's going to be going on in Miami, probably going to be negative. Therefore, they're going to probably be throwing a lot. I mean, the volume is on Parker's side. Whether or not he gets that efficiency up in terms of yards after the catch, yards after catch per reception, that remains to be seen. That remains how opposing defenses are going to be playing him. Whether or not they're going to be double teaming him or not, we'll find out. But I like Parker where he's going. Looking after him, you have Josh Allen, who I think we just agreed on a little bit earlier. Probably some of us agreed to take him. Others agreed to move on. You have Damian Williams. Tyler Boyd. I love Tyler Boyd if A.J. Green is healthy. I do not like Tyler Boyd if A.J. Green is not healthy. Kareem Hunt, Tyler Higbee. I'd rather have Parker. Yeah, I'm on board the Devontae Parker train. Ken?
What I will also say with Devontae Parker is that once Tua does take over, the one thing about Tua is actually he has been he was a pretty accurate quarterback in college at Alabama, 71% his last year. In his freshman year, he was 63.6%. Now, obviously, college and pros, whatever. But if it was 63%, that would be the second best season completion percentage wise for Ryan Fitzpatrick in his career. So he had one season where it was like 69%, I think. But Devontae Parker will now, once Tua takes over, because he will eventually take over, he has a more accurate passer throwing to him, which can only lead to obviously more yards and more opportunity for him.
And more fantasy points. So,
more fantasy points, yeah.
I think we're all over Parker here. It sounds like fantasy.
Yep. Yeah. Keep going down the list.
All right. So next up is somebody who I think you guys are probably all off on. It sounds like everyone is shied away from this New England offense. Julian Edelman, the clear number 1 target, 8th round ADP, very beginning of the 8th round, pick 8.2. Here's the wide receivers going around that in like the 8th and 9th round. Christian Kirk, McCole Hardman, Darius Slayton, Emmanuel Sanders, Mike Williams, Marvin Jones. So why not Julian Edelman? We'll start there. He's 34 years old. He lost his boy, like his best friend on the football field, Tom Brady, left him out to hang with Bill Belichick in the locker room. I mean, that is just brutal, right? That connection can obviously never be topped, right? Like the trust Brady had in Edelman and the the way that Edelman laid it on the line for Brady every single week was, awesome to watch. Even if you hated the Patriots, it was just awesome to watch Edelman get up after getting blasted on these little tiny 3-yard routes that Brady made him run all game long, just to wear down the opposing team and have somebody else score the touchdown. So kudos to Julian Edelman as an actual football player. But why do we want him on our fantasy teams, right? That's what we care about. We don't care about real football. So Cam Newton,
what's that?
right. I mean, what the heck is real football? So Cam Newton is going to be the quarterback in New England if he's healthy, right? Like we all agree with that. So Cam Newton has got an injured shoulder. I mean, he just does. Nate mentioned it before. These non-weight bearing joints, they don't heal well. So the last 2 years that Cam was throwing with this injured shoulder, his average depth of target, Jorge, I know you love this stat, 8.5 in 2017, 7.2 in 2018.
That's not good.
Julian Edelman, guess what Julian Edelman's average depth of target is over his career? 8.0 yards, right in Cam's window, right in Cam's bum arm window. He's had 150 plus targets 2 of the last 3 seasons. Incredible. He's way tougher than you think. I know we all think Julian Edelman always gets hurt. Besides 2017, when he destroyed his knee, complete ACL blowout, he's just been out there for like every single game, man. I mean, this guy's a gamer. Yeah, he's 34. Sometimes these older guys are just like made a little different, right, Ken? You guys are made a little bit tougher. You can take the hit. You can, you're not scared to get. You're not scared to take a punch,
little
man.
Snowflakes.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody raised a fist at me, I'm hitting the ground. Ken, you're just gonna take him out. I mean, that's just how you guys are made.
Bounce off me like iron.
34 is so old, Ken. So I don't know how old that makes you, but 34 is like dirt old. And that's the only argument I got against Julian Edelman. And so if that's the only argument I have against him, if that's the only argument I have against him, then I guess I'm with him, right? Because there's no reason to doubt that he's the number one guy in New England. There's no reason to think that Bill Belichick's going to say, oh, all those great, offense, all those great drives that we had where we just let Edelman run his little routes against crappy slot corners and linebackers that were too slow to cover him. Like, are they going to throw that part of the playbook out? No. It doesn't matter who the quarterback is, even if Jared Stidham or whoever the heck it ends up being the quarterback there. But I think it's going to be Cam.
Brian Hoyer.
Brian Hoyer, right. So I am surprisingly on all 3 of these AFC East wide receivers. And I think that when I sum this all up, what I want to nail home really quickly here before we go is these are 3 wide receivers that you can get in the 5th, 7th, and like 8th or 9th rounds. So you know what that means? You should be taking the best running back as many times as you can at the top of your drafts. Forget about tight end and quarterback in 1 tight end and 1 quarterback leagues. Grab all the running backs you can because there just aren't any. We listen to Nate talk about these guys you got to take a risk on, the Singletaries, the Bells, the James Whites. You don't need to have these guys on your team this year. In years past, you did. In 2020, you need to get your running backs early. And then there's a plethora of wide receivers, especially in the AFC East, where these guys are clearly the number one guys, 120, 130, 150 targets. Wait on your wide receivers. Get the AFC East guys.
So would you agree? And let's not forget late 9th round, John Brown, another value at that point. And I know we're going a little bit farther than the middle rounds, but we're looking at tight end, the only tight end that really appeals to us in the AFC East. Mike Gesicki, early 10th round, great target last year. Didn't do much with yards after the catch, but he was a consistent red zone threat, so that is somebody to keep an eye on. All right.
Hey, wait, hold on 1 second, real quick.
Yeah.
We didn't touch on one person who I like. Just want to give a quick shout out. I'm a Jamison Crowder fan quite a bit. I love where he's going at. I mean, there's extreme value there. I see him actually outproducing Edelman in yards, receptions, targets, touchdowns. I don't know, but that
yards, receptions, and targets. We're going to get a bet on the next behind the frames, Nate.
I have him for 7 versus Edelman 6, so I'm taking the over. But we will. Sorry, Jorge, put your hands back up. We wrapped up. We're great.
We're wrapped. That is Behind the Frames, episode 4 this week. Aaron's, sending a message that we all should be following. Thank you for your service, Aaron, and everything you're doing in the health field. We appreciate that. Nate, great always. Ken, always a fun time. And we'll see you next week, folks, for Behind the Frames, episode 4. Don't forget to listen to our podcast, Fourth and Frames, this week. Read all of our articles at fantasyandframes.com. Interact with us on Twitter. We're very nice people. You'll have a good time. And we'll catch you later.
Cheers.